Well, I, for one, being a therapist, I like to think I know far better than most as to some of the wacky conspiracy theories that some people come up with. And this today is going to be one of them. But as a side note, especially when it comes to government conspiracies, I often cite that I had 2 previous jobs historically, with a moment leading up to my life of having a top secret security clearance. Having a unique perspective as for how far off people can be with some of those wacky conspiracies that travel close to my own security and military backgrounds. And of course, one of those conspiracies you've heard on my channel before had to do with those flat earthers, that again, all the science in the world isn't enough to disprove their theory. Especially when it comes to over-the-horizon targeting. And of course, the use of a periscope, where literally the Earth's curvature actually blocks the visibility of supercargo ships. Consequently, all militaries of the world that use long-range ordnance have to mathematically compensate for such a curvature through their fire control solutions. And of course, I had quite the chuckle when I did a reverse search or a reverse query for the Urantia Book, and of course, saw the words celestial tea cult pop up as part of the common search query. One popular video that received over 160,000 views made erroneous claims, such as indicating that most people agree that Dr. William Sadler wrote the Urantia Book. A man by the name of Wilbur, and not Wilfred Kellogg, was suspected as being the sleeping subject, and that the Urantia Book is against mixed-race children. So needless to say, we have a lot to unpack here. To keep this video short, I am purposely omitting that podcast reference to 3 works of the Sadlers, such as Longheads and Roundheads, Race Decadence, and The Truth About Heredity. And in addition, I prefer to fully review such a text before I'm about to provide my opinion on it. A behavior I wish other podcast journalists would conduct, rather than use a simple AI search engine, taking things out of context, and consequently providing misinformation to the masses. After all, this one video podcast that I'm referring to was defaming 2 people in an entire company due to an association of a text in which they are citing outside of context. Let's remember that tea is often a symbol of comfort, friendship, and health. And if such a conspiracy is actually true, which it isn't, then such an influential company, such as Celestial Tea, likely has one heck of a story to tell. But before we get started, I would like to distance the Celestial Tea management today by indicating that I believe the Hain Celestial Group now owns the company, and consequently, today's story is only pertaining to the company's distant origins and not its current operation or management. The story of Celestial Seasonings, the beloved herbal tea company, is often told as a tale of entrepreneurial spirit, countercultural creativity, and a rise of natural foods in America. Founded in Boulder, Colorado in 1969, the company quickly became a household name. Its sleepy time tea and whimsical packaging provided symbols of comfort and wellness. Yet beneath this wholesome image lies a history that is far more complex and controversial for any outside journalist to fully comprehend. At the heart of the story of all things is the Urantia Book, a sprawling religious text published in 1955 by the Urantia Foundation, which claimed to be a revelation from celestial beings. The book's teachings profoundly influenced Siegel, one of the Celestial Seasonings founders, and shaped the ethos of the company in its early years, which includes the Celestial title. As a fast bridge to present day, and to get to the punchline here, Siegel is now the acting president of the Urantia Foundation, which is why some people view the connection as being extremely significant. Critics of this connection have since dubbed this entanglement the Celestial Tea cult, pointing to what they feel to be disturbing eugenics passages in the Urantia Book and questioning how such ideas could be tied to a mainstream consumer brand. The late 1960s in Boulder, Colorado were marked by a vibrant countercultural scene. Siegel and Wick Hay, 2 of the company's co-founders, began gathering wild herbs in the Rocky Mountains in 1969, blending them into teas they sold to the local health food stores. It should also be indicated that Wick Hay is majorly omitted from the company's About Us page. likely due to leaving the company years later, but is mentioned on various other websites discussing the history of the company. Their enterprise was not just commercial, but cultural. Herbal teas embodied the countercultural rejection of processed foods and pharmaceuticals. The company's name, Celestial Seasonings, reflected both the cosmic spirituality of the era and Siegel's devotion to the Urantia Book, a fringe religious text that claimed to be a revelation from celestial beings. Boulder's openness to unconventional ideas allowed such a venture to thrive. By 1972, blends like Red Zinger and Sleepy Time had become popular, transforming a cottage industry into a national brand, Celestial Seasonings. The Boulder scene provided not only a market, but also a cultural legitimacy. Herbal teas were part of a broader movement toward natural living, which included organic farming, vegetarianism, and holistic health. Celestial Seasonings tapped into this ethos, offering products that symbolized purity and harmony. At the same time, the company's ties to the Urantia Book reflected the era's fascination with alternative spiritualities. Boulder's counterculture blurred the lines between commerce and spirituality, making it possible for a tea company to carry cosmic undertones without alienating customers. This blending of fringe spirituality and consumer branding is not unique to Celestial Seasonings. Other companies have similar origins, showing how cultic or religious movements can shape mainstream products. For example, the Ranker survey of companies with unexpected cult-like group associations highlights several cases, but we'll just be mentioning a couple today. One striking example is the bedazzled jacket worn by Michael Jackson on the cover of Bad, which was designed by members of an evangelical Christian cult. In this case, a fringe religious group infiltrated pop culture through fashion. Another example is the influence of Scientology on certain Hollywood enterprises, where the church's teachings have shaped creative and business decisions. Comparing these cases with Celestial Seasonings reveals common patterns. First, fringe religious or cultic movements often emphasize purity, transcendence, or cosmic purpose, values that can be translated into consumer products. Second, countercultural milieus provide fertile ground for such ventures, as consumers are open to experimentation and alternative lifestyles. Third, successful branding can sanitize and mainstream these origins, making products appear wholesome even when their roots are controversial. Celestial Seasonings today emphasizes sustainability and, of course, quality through ethical sourcing, distancing itself from the Urantian roots. Yet the history remains, a reminder of how cultic ideas can seep into everyday life, and their once leader now holds the prominent position of president on the Urantia Foundation's website. To understand this controversy, we must first begin with the Urantia Book itself, emerging in the mid-20th century. The book presented itself as a divine revelation, dictated by celestial beings through a Chicago psychiatrist named William Sadler. Sadler claimed that a patient in his care entered trances, during which messages from higher beings were delivered. These messages were compiled into the Urantia Book, a text of over 2,000 pages that combined theology, cosmology, and pseudoscience. The book describes a universe of a vast hierarchy of planets and beings, with Earth, called Urantia, as one small part of a divine plan. It reinterpreted the life of Jesus, portraying him as a cosmic figure whose mission was misunderstood by traditional Christianity. For followers, the book offered a sense of cosmic purpose and spiritual renewal. For critics, it was a bizarre amalgam of science fiction and theology, riddled with pseudoscientific claims and radical ideas. Among some of the most inflated aspects of the Urantia Book by critics includes race and eugenics. But before jumping the gun here, let me start by making a simple observation and statement. Most people that I know would be against siblings or other direct family members making children together. This rationale being that having two strains of nearly identical DNA expression will often highlight and not compensate for genetic defects or mutations, leading to all sorts of risks associated with health problems for the child. Of such occurrences, there have been hundreds of documentaries and studies that can easily be reviewed online. All right, consequently, here's one of the first eugenic statements that makes some people gawk. Located in 51.5.7. You must now work out your planetary problem of race improvement by other and largely human methods of adaptation and control. But what critics won't tell you about this statement is its context, where it's coming from inside the pages. So let's explore that for a moment. The context of this statement is associated with the violet race that partially failed, that came direct from Jesus Christ due to the default of Adam and Eve. This violet race was never meant to be a standalone race, but was one that was meant to interbreed with the progenitor Adamic races to increase their overall health and spiritual receptivity. Yes, the text explicitly endorses the elimination of inferior races, but it references the races of old that assimilated through either interbreeding or Darwinism, such as the colored races. For those of you that are curious as to what these superior races represent when it comes to the Urantia Book, one being the red man or the Native American race, that can be found in 51.4.2. Indicating that earlier races were somewhat superior to later when it comes to the colored races. Despite the book very much indicating that there were preferred stocks of biological specimens, mostly by life carriers, I would like to point out that all of this talk of colored races and breeding practices is either an objective observation of our distant past or representative of future civilization progression on other planets. The book itself claims that on more advanced planets, races will blend together and that there will be a single race simply due to all the future melting pot interbreeding due to advanced transportation and, of course, communication, like we're experiencing today. The book very much endorses all persons of equal spiritual endowment, and that our evolution on our planet, which includes every race and biological defect, to be part of God's plan on an experimental decimal planet. The Urantia Foundation, based in Chicago, controlled the publication and distribution of the Urantia Book. It did indeed operate with secrecy, limiting access and cultivating mystique for those that never read the book. Followers also formed study groups, treating the book as scripture. The foundation maintained strict control, discouraging interpretation outside its authority. Scholars of new religious movements have noted that the Urantia Foundation exemplifies how fringe texts can attract devoted followings, despite, or perhaps because of, their radical claims. The combination of secrecy, cosmic revelation, and authoritarian control gave the movement a cult-like feeling to its critics. Now, when it comes to my perspective, and in defense of the Urantia Book, the Commission and Foundation wanted to prevent the creation of an apocrypha or future distortions or alterations of the text, which is why historically measures were taken in the past to stop future unauthorized reproduction of the Urantia papers. I will also say that the book itself had actually lost its copyright protection in 1995 due to a federal judge indicating that a work for hire by an anonymous author was invalid to renew copyright protections. The text is very much free to read, download, and listen to on the Urantia Foundation's website, dismantling any secrecy surrounding the text itself. Siegel first encountered the text in the 1960s. Living in Boulder during the countercultural ferment, Siegel was captivated by its vision. He became a lifelong devotee, leading study groups and integrating the book's teachings into his worldview. When he and his friends began making herbal teas from wild herbs gathered in the Rocky Mountains, which, by the way, is such a cool story, they named their company Celestial Seasonings, a likely nod to the cosmic themes of the Urantia Book. The company's ethos of natural living and spiritual harmony was infused with Urantian ideals. Siegel himself admitted in interviews that he used the book as a guide for business decisions and personal philosophy. And I would also like to add, so does any other business owner that has a religious denomination affiliation. That's part of their moral and belief system, right? Their value system. Makes perfect sense. As an example, he believed that the book's teachings about health and purity aligned with herbal teas as alternatives to pharmaceuticals. And might I add soda as well. Celestro Seasonings grew rapidly, becoming a household name. Its branding emphasized comfort, nature, and whimsy, making the esoteric influences behind the scenes. Some of its popularity had to do with the colorful art choices as part of the marketing strategy, directly found on their tea boxes. Yet traces of the Urantia Book was found in subtle ways. Some of the company's early marketing materials included quotations from the book itself. Employees reported that Siegel encouraged the study of the text, while the company eventually distanced itself from overt religious messaging. The connection remained. Critics began to highlight this history, dubbing it the Celestial Tea Cult, to emphasize what they felt to be an unsettling blend of consumerism and cultic, eugenic ideology. That is, those people that, of course, never read the Urantia Book in its entirety. The controversy intensified as journalists and vloggers uncovered the Urantia Book's eugenics passages, likely through artificial intelligence search queries. In an era increasingly hyper-aware of systemic racism, the revelation that a beloved tea brand had roots in a text advocating racial elimination was disturbing enough for those looking for a quick inflated story to grab views through society's negativity biases. Articles and outlets like Inverse, Tasting Table, Mile Higher, and Mashed detailed the connections, sparking debate among patrons. Some argued that the company's current operations were far removed from its founders' beliefs. Others insisted that legacy still mattered, especially given what uninformed critics believed to be the book's toxic ideas. The debate raised broader questions. How should we evaluate consumer brands with troubling origins? Can a company truly separate itself from the ideology of its founders? The Urantia controversy also illuminates the porous boundaries between counterculture and cult. In the 1960s and 1970s, many young people sought alternatives to mainstream religion and medicine. Herbal teas, meditation, and fringe texts offered new paths. Celestro Seasonings emerged from this milieu, blending natural products with spiritual exploration. For critics that were hungry for a cult story, the Urantia Book was not a simple religion, nor harmless mysticism. It carried dangerous pseudoscience. The fact that it could inspire an entire company exhibited to them how cultic ideas can be normalized when wrapped in comforting packaging. This story also raises questions as to the commercialization of spirituality. Celestial Seasonings marketed not just tea, but a lifestyle of harmony, wellness, and natural living. This lifestyle was rooted in Urantian cosmology, even if consumers were unaware. In investigating the Celestial Tea Cult, we see a story that is both specific and emblematic. Specifically, it is about Celestial Seasonings, Siegel, and the Urantia Foundation. Emblematically, it is about how fringe religious movements intersect with consumer culture. It shows how religious beliefs can be twisted into cultic ideas through the media that wishes to have a viral story. However, if such a cult story should have more merits behind it, it would raise questions about accountability. Should consumers care about the beliefs of a company's founder? It also raises questions about memory. How do we remember and reckon with distorted, troubling histories? Ultimately, the story isn't just about tea. It is about the entanglement of spirituality, commerce, and ideology in modern America. Celestial Seasonings is a case study how perceived cultic texts can inspire mainstream products, and how these products can carry hidden legacies. The Celestial Tea Cult is a reminder that even the most comforting consumer goods can have religious affinities, despite this designation being both distorted and inaccurate, since the Urantia Book does not even view itself as being a religion. According to critics, to sip sleepy time tea is to participate, however unknowingly, in a story that stretches from alien revelations to corporate boardrooms. It is a story worth investigating, not to condemn, tea drinkers, but to illuminate the complex ways in which perceived cultic ideas seep into everyday life. Well, that's all, folks. Take it from somebody that's read the Urantia Book numerous times that there is nothing tyrannical, insidious, or even cult-like associated with the Urantia Book, its foundation, or the once associated tea company. The text honors most of the world's religions and sees spiritual equality in all races and genders. Albeit sometimes the scientist farmers, the life carers of the Urantia Book, some of those authors, they sometimes treat us more like racehorses than actual people when it comes to how they talk about us and breeding practices. Strange. But this is all due to the course of natural evolution, or what they call biological upliftment or conditioning that we have already experienced through our own individualistic evolution. If Mo ever mentioned the Urantia Book at his once company, it is likely the same conditions existed where we all share our positive experiences with individuals in which we cherish. As a brief example, where does your value system come from? How about societies? Look at the back of a dollar bill. Go to your local courtroom and listen to half of the politicians we have in Congress to get a similar answer. God and one's belief system should not be a taboo word. If the text really did influence the development of the company, then this ethos is a no-brainer and is not nefarious at all to anyone. I, for one, am more concerned with an individual that views himself as being God, or, of course, the bottom line. The Urantia Book does speak of reducing biological defects through reduced breeding practices of those individuals that have genetic mutations on advanced planets. This, coupled along with what I can find as being the most scandalous passage in 72.10.3, indicating that on a planet that attempted to prevent breeding of criminals and defectives, or those with genetic defects, was seen by those people as having a gratifying result. That's it. Colored races that interbred long ago with their own biological characteristics, a violet race that descended directly from Jesus Christ, and advanced planets that learned how important genes are in human development and, of course, human behavior. In psychology, we are still in our infancy when it comes to trying to explain how exactly what we once called junk DNA affects us through epigenetics. And through exposure to cortisol and other glucocorticoids that can lead to certain regions of the brain being underdeveloped or hypersensitive that may lead to criminality coupled with transgenerational trauma. We also know that your temperament is more biological than is conditioned through your environment. Now, I would never tell anyone who to love or who to have a child with. But then again, neither did the Urantia Book make such a mandate either. The whole book circumnavigates free will, equality, human choice, and finding God within yourself. In addition, the observations made by these self-professed higher beings are by no means the perfect or direct word of God themselves and is open to interpretation. So I want to end this video by thanking Mr. Siegel for all of his hard work when it comes to the Urantia Foundation and, of course, making that wonderful tea company, Celestial Seasonings. When it comes to the critics and the people that say that this is a cult, again, that's just for their channels to go viral. And of course, then taking shortcuts when it comes to using artificial intelligence to come up with their narratives. All right. Well, thank you again for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.